It's great to be here today. My name is Megan Sands. I am the managing consultant at Turning West, and I'm joined here with my colleague, Dr. Peggy Kendall. And we're really excited to talk to you all today about deep listening and really the power of being present. I think this is a great title because we often talk about and think about the importance of listening, but it really is a powerful tool and something that we're really excited to talk about. So a little bit of background on Turning West. We are an organization development firm based in Southern California, and we help accelerate companies by improving their organization culture. And so we're often engaged by a number of companies to do coaching and professional development for individuals, a lot of teamwork to help team development, as well as a large-scale strategic planning and other organization-wide projects. So we're really excited to jump into this topic today. So Peggy, if you have any other thing to add to the introduction, we can get going.
Yes. So I am Dr. Peggy Kendall, and I also am a professor at a university in Minnesota, and I've been teaching in the Communication Studies department for at least 25 years. And I'll tell you what, when I first started teaching, when we'd get to the topic of listening, I'd be like, oh, this is easy. No one's, I'll take like maybe 10 minutes in one of the classes. And over and over again, people have said the one thing that changed the way that I communicate. I mean, I go through so many awesome things. The one thing that changed the way I communicate was listening. And so I began to really pay attention to how listening impacts leadership, how effective leaders seem to be so good at it. And even though it isn't that hard, it just seems really hard sometimes. So let me start with a couple of statistics. The first one, did you know that of all the time that you're awake, 45% of that time is spent in listening? In other words, that's like 7.5 hours. We're actually listening to someone, something. Okay, well, that kind of makes sense, I guess. But it's a big deal. I thought this particular survey was interesting. 96% of people believe that they are good listeners. But then when the study continued, they found out that right after a conversation, most of the people only remembered 50% of what they heard in that conversation. And to make matters worse, after 24 hours, they only retained 20%. So they think they're good listeners, but maybe listening is a little more complicated than what we might think.
All right. So yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. So the main outcomes that we really want to dive in here today to kind of make sure we don't fall into some of those stats that Dr. Kendall just shared with us. First, we want to make sure we understand the importance of listening, really see the value in it, and understand that it's a skill worth developing. Then we want to be able to identify barriers to listening, understand why it's difficult for your boss to listen to you, why it's difficult for you to listen to other people. And then lastly, really to learn tools and apply tools to become a better listener and ultimately a better leader in your organization.
So let's think about, I would challenge you to think about a time when you had some really bad listening taking place. So here's my question. Megan, what do you think? When is a time that you have been impacted by listening?
If I think of what it looks like and feels like to maybe not be listened to, I can think of times, whether it's myself or people I observe, but I guess for myself, if I'm speaking to someone and I'm sharing something really important, maybe it's important details about the work that I'm doing or an important idea I'm trying to wrestle through and understand. If I'm talking to someone and they are maybe looking at something else, or they appear to be distracted in some way, I might start to wonder, okay, are they actually listening? We have the very common, like, they're looking at their phone, or maybe if you're sitting together in a space, they're looking out the window, or they're just not giving you their full attention. And I know for sure I can be confident that they're not listening when I finish my well thought out, really, really important information, and then maybe they respond with something that's completely unrelated to what I had started the conversation with.
And here's my next question for you. So maybe someone didn't pay attention to you when you were all excited. So what's the impact of that?
I think there are a number of different impacts, and in preparing for this and thinking about why I think listening is important, I really started to think of there's some immediate impacts in the moment. You might have an emotional reaction. I might feel frustrated. I might feel like I'm not seen. If this is something that's really important to me, I might feel hurt. And so I think that immediate reaction and feeling an impact is really important. And even further than that, if this is a pattern or something that I've seen with this person over and over, I think it's even deeper than maybe some of those first emotional reactions. And so some of those impacts really are around the relationship being able to sustain, feeling like I can trust this person, feeling like I can rely on this person. And if we're talking about a work context here, that really influences how the work gets done. I might start to limit my information sharing to that person. The collaboration between that person might decrease, whether I do it intentionally or not. And then really you start to risk missing really critical information, or just ultimately not working with the people that are designed, and the work it necessitates us to work together. So I think at the summation of some of that, I think, is that ultimately it erodes some trust in the relationship and really damages the relationship, while also hurting the productivity of our working relationship.
Oh, I love that. I think this is like it has a direct impact on trust, because if I see, like, I like what you said about, like, especially someone who has this pattern of showing that they're not really paying attention. I absolutely am not going to go out of my way to express new ideas, to express frustration, to be authentic, and to really trust that they have my best in mind. I do think, one of the other places I see this happen is, like, in conversations. And this is so much, I think it's just amplified in a digital online sort of situation. When you're in a group situation and you say something, and then it's so clear that the next person didn't respond at all to what you said, because they were thinking about what they're going to say, or they didn't think that what you had to say was all that important. And you know what? That happens enough times, and pretty soon I just shut down if people aren't listening to what I have to say. So I think it has a direct impact on trust. And if we want to become better leaders, trust is absolutely what we need to build as we go forward. Let's see. So I think it's important to just really quickly discern. There's different kinds of listening, right? So if I'm listening to my daughter, like open up and explain, like have an emotional sort of conversation, well, I really shouldn't be like, wait, what's the information? What is the most important thing that you're saying here? I don't agree with what you're saying. No, it's all about the relationship in that point, right? It's empathetic. It's what are the emotions, reading between the lines, that relational piece. And it might be something like a really close friend, a really deep conversation. But I think these relational kinds of listening happen all the time in the workplace. And then sometimes, you just got to get the information, you know, um, it- and sometimes, if you're listening, like, let's just imagine for a second, this was like a really boring webinar. You might still need the information, but it gets so hard to pay attention. You just have to get the right information, right? And sometimes if it's a boring speaker or a speaker who is like all over the place or is like really vague, it's hard to get that information. And then sometimes when you listen, it's a whole different mindset when you're doing critical listening. The critical listening is really going to be more about, I'm not sure about that. And you listen with this mindset of not really what they're saying between the lines and the emotions, but more about, do I agree with the information? What's wrong with it? What seems to ring true? It's a whole different kind of listening. So I think the kind of listening that we're talking about today is going to be more focused on the relational piece. And quite honestly, I think even if we're in any kind of dialogue, that relational piece is present. And that's why listening can be so very important. So what I'd like to start with is to talk about why it's so hard. I mean, if you're listening to us like right now, you're listening. It's not that hard. It's like, oh, I hear you. I listen. As long as you can hear someone, you're listening, right? Yeah, not really. I think one of the first steps to become a better listener is to figure out times when things are more difficult to listen to, right? Figure out times when there's barriers to listening. When is it that you have a hard time listening, and when is it that you just don't really, it doesn't work out like you wanted it to? So let me talk about some of the barriers that different communication scholars have come up with. And I think, like I said, that's the first step in identifying how to become a better listener. So, like I said, I think the virtual environment is just ripe with problems, listening problems. In fact, we just, at the university I'm at, we just finished a study on remote management. And we interviewed a number of different remote employees. And one of the things that they told us is that one of the biggest challenges to psychological safety and trust is that my boss always seems so busy. And we'd be like, oh, well, like, do they know that they're busy? Are they busy? And we kind of ask them, like, what are the different things that tell you they're too busy for you? And it was just things like, obviously, like checking emails. I mean, if I think about my online desk, my work from home office, it's like I've got these screens, I've got the lights, I got stuff going on, I got the dog over there, I got all sorts of stuff. There's so many distractions. And I think just that setup tells me, it just makes it so much more difficult to listen. And I also think because it's this virtual, all you see is my face, my head. And that's all I have to show you that I'm paying attention. My body language could be like, I really care about you. But this is all you got is my face. And so I think environmental barriers can be really, really difficult. Sometimes I think there's just so many distractions, so much stuff in the online, in the workplace, in the in-person workplace. There's things going on. And I'll tell you what, there is nothing more powerful when someone who's super busy, you go in and you say, I've got a question. Do you have a minute? And they turn around and they either close the door or they, turn off this. And it's like, they just focus on you. It's like they actually get rid of all those distractions. And wow, even just that little thing, I think just communicates so much, focus and committing to me that they really do care about me. So distracted. And then I think there's plenty of tech issues. Sometimes this might have nothing to do with listening, but sometimes when we're online, I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't know if it's my computer or what. The screen kind of moves, and pretty soon my face gets to be like this, and pretty soon like this is all you see. It's like that's all I see is my eyes and I'm darkly lit. And if that's the virtual conversation, I think it's really easy to communicate. I'm not really listening, and you're not as important as maybe I should communicate that you are. Other barriers. Sometimes it's just hard to listen because people can be so boring. Boring is like it's vague, it's not concrete and specific, it's disorganized. Sometimes you listen and I have found this with teachers. I don't know if this is true, but as a teacher, when I go into a classroom to learn something from another teacher, I am the worst teacher. It's like, it's so easy for me to be like, I know this. I already know this. I'm not getting anything out of it. So it's this attitude, right? Some people, I won't mention any relatives' names, but certain people that I know, when I talk to them, it's like, it's the same stories over and over again. And I know exactly what they're going to say. So it's so easy to tune out and just do a little, sometimes it's hard to listen because I don't really care what that person has to say. Now, I'm not going to tell them I don't care about you, I don't like you, but I'll tell you what, sometimes it's hard to keep track of the nonverbals, and I think sometimes that does come through because that's actually what we're thinking. Sometimes I think it's like when someone says something I don't agree with, sometimes it's like these hot button things. It's like, so let me give you an example. Whenever somebody says, somebody the other day said, yeah, that chick was really, really like offensive. And the word chick, I hate that word. As soon as he said it, my head was on fire. It's like, I cannot listen to anything else you're saying because you referred to a woman as a chick, and that is not okay. Didn't say anything, but that all of a sudden just made it so hard to listen to. And then sometimes there's stereotypes, right? I mean, I think it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't really think you know what you're talking about, so I'm not going to listen as well. It's not worth my time. So some of those attitude barriers. Megan, is there anything else you can think of? Any kinds of examples?
Well, I wanted to actually, one interesting example I'm seeing now, while you were talking, I was checking our settings here and we had someone send a chat. So Paul, thank you for your comment here. This is actually a funny example of we didn't listen virtually to your comment earlier, but he pointed out that it can feel like a person wants an audience rather than a conversation. And I think that I'll use his example as my comment here, because I think that really that is sometimes the barrier, that the person is really not there to have a conversation. They're there to speak or to be heard. And I think that's a really powerful example. And then the virtual example here, that we weren't quite listening and paying attention to our chat. So I apologize. And if anyone else has comments as we go, you can use the Q&A or the chat button on your screen.
And I think it's so true though, isn't it? Sometimes it's just hard to keep your mouth shut. Sometimes it's like, I think I'm so awesome and I have so many good things to say. And you're right. It's like I want to present instead of have a dialogue. I love that. That's really good. All right. And then just a couple of other things that I think can set us up for difficult listening experiences. There's something called rapid speech. And rapid speech just has to do with the fact that we tend to process things faster than than the rate that someone speaks, right? So like that just took me forever to say that, and most of you are like, yeah, got it. And so especially with slow speakers, it's like we're like on to something else. And so I think rapid speak is something. Selective attention, I think it's really easy to only pay attention to things that I agree with, or things that I don't agree with, or things that reinforce kind of some of the things that I'm already thinking. And then you know how this is, response prep. It's like, I'm not listening to you because I've got something really good to say. And as soon as you quit talking, I'm going to say it. Well, of course, that means that you are not listening to the person in front of you. And then, yeah. So those are some of the barriers to listening. If you stop to think about, when is it hard? Is there certain people that it's really hard for you to listen to? I know we work with this one person, and as soon as this person gets on the screen, the video screen, it's like, wow, my attitude just tanks. It's like, because it takes them so long to make a point. It's like, oh my gosh, just like get to the point, dude. And he has really good ideas and really good things to say, but I don't think I would ever get it because I have such a hard time listening to that particular person. So try and figure out, when are the times that you have the most difficulty listening. Anything else you want to add there, Megan, my friend?
Oh, I think that's great.
Okay. So the next thing is sort of related. So we've got these barriers, like this is what makes it difficult. But then we also have these ingrained bad habits that we tend to sort of use when we're not really into this so much. And I've got a couple of examples here. We are going to use a little bit of technology and we're going to see how this works. But I love these YouTube videos because they talk about two different kinds of bad listening habits. One is pseudo listening, which is like, yeah, like you look like you're listening, but you're not really listening. And the second one, studies have been done that suggest that maybe men tend to do this more than women, which I think is kind of interesting. Instead of listening just for empathy and trying to figure out what are they saying, how can I support that person? It's like, I'm listening to solve their problems. And sometimes that's not exactly what they need. So we're going to see, I'm going to stop sharing.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
Yeah. However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way.
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, you absolutely would not. And then furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Just pass the
So that's an interesting example of pseudo listening, because I don't think she was actually listening. This one has to do with problem solving. One of my favorite videos ever, and I hope it works.
Sorry about that.
It's just, there's all this pressure, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
Sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things.
Those are some fun examples, Peggy.
All right. So let me get back to where I was.
It's helpful to watch in kind of more personal settings too, both of those being relationships, because I think any of these skills, if we think about it in a specific relationship in our personal lives, we can start to see our own flaws and other people's frustrations even more than when we're thinking about the workplace.
All right, Megan, let's see.
Right.
Let's
So
talk
we're gonna
about what we can do.
So instead of the bad examples of listening that we observed and we just talked about, we want to talk about some specific tools for active listening. So the first one here we want to focus on is really using nonverbals. I'm sure a lot of this information is not necessarily new or groundbreaking, but it's a great reminder for us to just think about, okay, how am I showing that I'm listening to someone when I'm not even talking yet or not even acknowledging them verbally yet? So really making sure to use eye contact. Of course, if you're in a virtual setting, that means staring at your computer, but there is a feeling of whether or not you're making that virtual eye contact. And people can very quickly tell when you're working on something else on your computer, even if you're on Zoom. Of course, nodding. Peggy's demonstrating this right now. She's nodding as I'm speaking, so I can tell that she's paying attention. Really leaning in, especially if you're in person. But I even noticed this virtually as well, that I will get closer to the camera when I'm really trying to engage with the other person. And also your body direction. Dr. Kendall mentioned this earlier, that and this is often something even a recent coachee of mine was reflecting on this, that their CEO and their organization really, if you walked into their office with a question or something to talk to them about, that they completely stopped what they were doing on their computer and they turned away from the computer and gave full attention to the person that now walked into the room. And so that shift in not only your attention but your actual body direction really signals that the person that is now in your space and is trying to communicate with you is valuable, and really helps to build relationship and trust. And so it's interesting, even just recently talking to a client about this experience and them trying to model that behavior for their other colleagues. Also mirroring, giving some affirmation and other small sounds as you're really trying to express before you start speaking that you're paying attention to this person, rather than sitting straight and not giving them anything. And then also, of course, not interrupting the person. So our organization, sometimes we move very quickly, and so we probably could get better at this not interrupting goal here in nonverbals, because often when you're working really fast and you're trying to accomplish something, you're focused on the outcome or the information. And so you're really quickly start to talk over people and finish their sentences for them, or just assume you know where it's going and be like, okay, we got your information, let's move on. And so all of these things are really helpful to remind yourself to take a step back and remember when other people maybe haven't done this for you and it was a challenge. So those are some of the nonverbals that we recommend for active listening.
And I know for me, I know this stuff. It's not like rocket science, but unless I'm really paying attention, like for the last week of classes at my university, I was super busy, and I realized when people would come in, I just look at them like that and kind of pay attention to them. But I'm like, no, every time someone comes in, I'm going to move my chair and I'm going to have eye contact with them, even if I am so tired of listening to what they have to say because they've been in here, I don't know how many times, and they're still whatever. But it's like I had to really focus on eye contact. And once I did, I was horrified at how many times people talk to me and I don't look at them. And I know this whole virtual thing makes it difficult, but even in real life, when your spouse is talking to you, do you look at your spouse? You can always tell who's married in a restaurant because when they talk, they don't look at each other.
Oh, that's
yeah, look at that next time. So just choosing like one of these things to really pay attention to for a couple of days, I think is really a key to becoming a better listener.
And Peggy, can you explain mirroring for us? We've had a question from the group.
Yeah, so mirroring is one of those things that if someone is like super excited about something and you're sitting there like super sad, mirroring is like mirroring the emotion that they're bringing to this conversation. And sometimes it's even mirroring their body direction, how they're using their hand gestures. Because interesting, research says that when you start adopting some of the same mannerisms as someone who's talking, when you mirror them, that increases liking and increases feelings of support and things like that. All right.
All right. And then in addition to the nonverbals, some verbal responses that you can give for active listening really are in two categories. So asking clarifying questions when someone has spoken, and rather than maybe just moving on without completely understanding what their intent was or what their point was, but stopping to say, I'm not sure I understood what you were just explaining there, or can I ask a clarifying question about one of those things? This shows the person that you were paying attention because you have a detail that you'd like to zoom into and better understand. And then the second area here is really checking for shared meaning. So often, especially in our work when we're doing executive coaching, we're practicing this constantly, where you listen to someone, and rather than just continue the conversation in another direction, you first stop to summarize, okay, what I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling this way, or what I'm hearing you say is that we are having a challenge in this area, and the problem is this, and so now we can talk about and kind of intro and use that as a transition to the next thing that you're talking through. This is something that we try to coach teams and individuals in. As Dr. Kendall said, often we observe groups, one person speaks and then another person speaks, and then and if you weren't paying attention, it's like, how are these ideas connected? Like, they're not talking to each other and they're not really any overlap.
No.
And so really trying to turn these discussions into actual conversations. Okay, Peggy, I appreciate what you just said there, and that really is interesting, because what I was thinking about in my perspective of the problem was this other direction, and kind of connecting those things. So those are two really specific and really important skills here in responding and active listening.
And I really like your comment about like in teams when people don't seem to be listening to each other. One of the things that I've used in teamwork is I'll have, when a team gets going, I'll have them every time before they say what they're going to say, they have to summarize what the person in front of them said. And at first it's like, oh, this is so painful. But what happens is when I have to summarize what you just said, it becomes more of a conversation, right? Yes, and right. And just doing that for like one meeting, I would suggest try it. One meeting in your team. And before I go on, I have to repeat or summarize or paraphrase what you just liked, or something about that I really appreciate. And all of a sudden, people start listening to each other. The last thing has to do with repeating. And I have found this, especially in executive coaching, this is really helpful. So for instance, someone might say something like, I was so frustrated that they disrespected me. Well, disrespected you. You know, all I did was just say what they just said. And it's amazing. They feel heard, and now they're going to expound on that particular thing.
Yeah, that one actually, that spurs a very recent example for me with a coachee. They said something very definitively like, well, we need to first figure out if we have the finances before we explore this idea. Or there was like a very definitive statement like this. And then I just paused and I said, oh, well, you said that we have to do it in this order, that it must be the finances first before we explore the potential idea here. And I didn't say whether that was right or wrong. I just repeated it back because you could tell there was some emotion there. And then they paused and said, well, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be one and then the other. And then it continued the conversation and opened the conversation in a whole new way. And really, as me, I was just showing that I was listening. I wasn't giving him the answer or pushing him in a specific direction. So the repeating, I think, is really helpful.
Excellent. All right.
All right. And then some of the encouragement here we have for you is that we start shifting our mindset about listening. And so we've given you 3 kind of broad categories for how you can think about this and kind of give you a challenge here. So we challenge you to really focus, to turn off your notifications when you're meeting with people, to limit distractions. As we said, if someone comes into your office, really turning away from your computer and giving full attention, turning towards the person talking to you and showing that focus. Because that immediate signal is really powerful for relationship building and collaboration, and really showing that person on the relational side that they're valuable, but also that the work you're doing together is really important and you rely on them. We also challenge you to really make a commitment in one of these areas, maybe building one of the skills, maybe in even just this idea of focus, and really showing the other person respect and listening in that way. So committing to modeling this behavior in your organization. And then lastly, when it makes sense and it's necessary, to really follow up on conversations. This can be a longer lasting sign of you really paying attention. If someone opened up to you about something, or there was a problem that was explained and really talked to you about, that you follow up and check in. How is that going? Have we figured out a solution? And that shows long term that you're really listening and acknowledge them. And ultimately are trying to help solve the problem.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I found that this idea of when someone like an employee comes into my office, instead of me seeing them as a distraction, because that's like a mindset, like I need to get this done, they are a distraction. I stop and think for just a second, why am I in this job in the first place? Especially as a faculty person, it's like, I am here to see that person succeed. That's my job. That's what thrills me. And so as they walk into my office, I have to like, okay, this is what's important right now. And then I commit to listening a little bit better.
All right, we've started to. Okay, go ahead, Peggy.
Okay. This is, for me, this is actually one of the most helpful things that I have found. It helped me figure out why I have such a hard time listening to certain kinds of people, and why I can be so obnoxious sometimes with certain people. I'm usually not that obnoxious, but sometimes I am. It has to do with listening styles. So we can do all of these kinds of listening, right? I mean, we're smart people. We can do this. But when I get busy, when I'm not paying attention, I tend to kind of revert back into a certain style, a certain way of listening. So some people, when they shift into that listening mode, are there to solve a problem. And anytime you're going to talk to them, you can tell they're going to try and solve it, right? So if that's you, you got to see that bias. Like, okay, I got to switch off my problem solving here. And this is all about just listening to the emotion and kind of giving support, right? So analytical is one. Relational is another. You really trying to read between the lines. What are the emotions here? Which is really important. Sometimes it's like, wait, they just totally lied to you, or what they're giving you is like not even right information. So sometimes relational listening is super important, but if that's your switch, your fallback, sometimes you need to step back and say, oh, maybe the relationship is not the most important thing going on here. Yeah, actually, I've seen this when I've had to, when I was working with someone I was supervising, giving them hard information and making sure that they understand the consequences. The relational piece was super important, which is what I tend to kind of fall into. But quite honestly, I had to listen in a little different way, and I had to fight against some of my relational biases, I'd say. Maybe you're a critical listener, and you tend to analyze like what's right, what's wrong, and those kinds of things. And if that's your natural bent, you gotta like be able to just step in and say, oh, maybe this is not the time for critical listening. And then task focus. I have a very hard time with this because I've been teaching, and everybody who works with me knows this. My husband knows this. I've been teaching public speaking for 25 years, right? Public speaking, it's like you have your thesis, your main points, your 1, 2, 3, and it's like, then you're done. Be done speaking. And sometimes I'll just give you an example. My husband is a great storyteller, but it takes forever for him to finish a story. And it's like, dude, just what is your point? Get to the point. And at those points, at those times, it's really important for me to just be like, all right, efficiency here in this conversation is not the most important thing. I need to just back off and let them talk, right? So sometimes if you tend to be very task oriented, you really do want people to get to the point. So those are some of the listening styles. Megan, what kind of listening style do you think you have?
I think that I'm probably an analytical listener, so trying to solve a problem, and then I think go straight to the task. So it's first problem solving and then task. So I personally have trouble sometimes on the relational side. I can help other people with that really well, but when it's me and my team and working with you, I'm sure you've observed this. It's very much focused on, okay, let's get the work done, and then so I have to make sure to build connection and understand emotion and pause for people instead of running full steam ahead towards fixing the problem that I've analyzed.
That is so good. That gives me so much insight. That is so good. All right. Last comments. Coaching, next steps. What do you think?
So for coaching, I think we often think about when and how are we helping our clients with this skill of listening, and oftentimes this comes in executive coaching, as we've really kind of talked about throughout this webinar today, but ultimately executive coaching is all about building self-awareness. And so like even just now, Peggy asked, what's my style? That's my perspective of my style. But in developing my self-awareness, I might realize, oh, actually my style is something different, and I get feedback from people. And so it takes time to actually figure out how we are perceived by others, not just how we think we're perceived. And so coaching can really help, especially in this skill of listening, because it helps to highlight your unconscious communication habits. You can learn and practice these active communication or active listening skills that we've talked about here by observing those from your coach and role playing those practices with your coach. We ultimately really help and really observe people transform their communication in coming into our session, talking through something, and really ultimately improving their interpersonal and working relationships by problem solving and talking through it with us. So overall, we really see that coaching offers a really structured approach to transform your listening from something that's passive and something we think we're always doing to something that's really intentional, proactive, and really something that's a skillful practice.
Yeah.
And I see you nodding a lot, Peggy. So I feel like you have one more thing to say, and then we'll wrap up here.
Well, like I started with, I think I have seen listening transform relationships and trust in organizations more than anything else. When I think of the most effective leaders, I think of people who actually are very good listeners. And when I walk into the room, I am the most important person in that room. And they're able to focus, and they just seem to do it so naturally. So my question for people listening is, what is your next step, right? What's that one thing you can do? I mean, it's not that hard, right? But it's so hard. What's the next thing that you can do to improve your listening? Because I guarantee that is really one of the keys to building trust in your organization.
All right, I love that last challenge, Peggy. Thank you. And I'm going to think for myself, what's my next step as well here. So thank you, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or follow-up, feel free to reach out to us directly. And otherwise, we'll see you next month for our next webinar.